Well, I'd known about Quran since I was a child, from education. It's mentioned at school. I'd never looked at it until the time of the issues around the satanic verses. My wife was bought the novel for Christmas. I didn't take any interest with it until the issue blew up over what Salman Rushdie had said, and the threats against him, and the burning of the book. So, out of interest, I sought a Quran, and I bought a copy of the Yusuf Ali translation of the Quran in Hampstead from a bookshop, and read it because I felt it was something I, as a police officer, needed to know more about, because it was such a controversy and it was affecting relationships between Muslims and the community. Yusuf Ali was the Quran I read to start with. His writing, his translation, is the one I've grown into Islam with. I took A-level physics, and I've maintained my interest in physics, even though I've become a police officer. And I've used physics in my work on different investigations. And so, yes, my interest and passion in physics continues. My eldest son has just received a Master of Physics from Oxford University and is doing a doctorate in physics. We talk physics at home. We live and breathe it. So yes, it's not something I'm doing as an amateur, or I am doing it as an amateur, because an amateur implies that you love something. So I do love physics. So yes, in that respect, yes, I'm a physicist. I was reading the Quran with an open mind, but the Quran purports to be the word of God, brought down by the angel Gabriel to the Prophet Muhammad. And if it is, this is God saying, look, this is the word, and I'll give you some evidence. Now, a lot of the evidence was relevant to people at the time of the revelation, but this sort of evidence is evidence for eternity, and that would gradually be discovered as science took its view of the universe. To me, when I read it, I immediately thought of the Big Bang Theory and the formation of the universe. And I thought how strange it was to see something like that in a book which I'd bought with an open mind. I felt, reading that one line, that was God saying, look, people of knowledge, people who discover things, scientists, I've done this. Here is proof that what I'm telling you here is divine revelation. And the same verse goes on to talk about every living thing being made of water, and it goes on to say about mountains being fixed in the earth lest it shake with you. And then throughout the book I kept finding little snippets like this that are saying, look at what I'm saying. I'm saying to you, this is proof for people who understand these things, that these words are true. I feel that those signs probably weren't understood when the Quran was revealed, and that's why a lot of the scholarly work then was on the other meanings of the Quran and the interpretation of those meanings. And these verses that we're discovering now were a mystery, by and large. There were some clues in them, but they are there because this is the final revelation of God. It has to last. It has to last beyond the period when the Prophet was alive. It has to last long into the future. And I suspect, as I believe others do, that other verses that seem obscure now will become clearer to us as science progresses. In Surah 51, verse 47, the Quran clearly talks about God expanding the universe with his power. And that to me was very clearly a reference to what we know now about the way the universe is expanding almost at the speed of light in all directions. And something that was only discovered in the last 100 years and referred to by Hubble and other scientists. So this kind of building of the universe with an organized structure seemed to sing through to me from that verse. Once again, this is the Quran speaking to us, and God is saying this is divine revelation. I think much of the age of skepticism is a Western construct, and the Western tradition has come from the Bible. the Western American, North European traditions have come from skepticism of the Bible, which doesn't have those sort of verses, because it's appealing to a much earlier and older audience. The people of the time of the New Testament and the Old Testament. Because that skepticism around the Bible is now pretty much embedded in the West, there's a similar skepticism of holy books. What the Quran needs is more people in the West to see the content of the Quran and see the scientific verses, so that that skepticism of divine revelation can be looked at afresh, and people can understand that there is a holy book that talks to people and talks to modern science and says, this is the way the universe is. The Quran is so much more than the other holy books before it. The Quran tasks us as individuals to look further into science, to look further into understanding the universe. And at no point says turn away from science. Quite the reverse. And anybody who reads it that way is perhaps being willfully ignorant. It is saying seek knowledge, and it's not saying seek metaphysical knowledge, which you can't, or knowledge of the spiritual world. It's saying seek knowledge of this universe you are in. And that's why I feel that scientific discovery is a duty for Muslims, for Muslim societies, to push forward scientific discovery so that we can understand the deeper meanings, so that we can understand our own world, our duty to understand ourselves and the universe around us. But I believe that as we do so, the verses of the Quran will reveal more to us and help confirm that this is divine revelation. I think there's an almost superstitious view of science in some parts of the Islamic world today, because people see science as the domain of the West and it being Western values that are being promulgated through science. But it isn't the case. Muslims need to understand that they own a great wealth of the history of science in the West. And it is thinking about the whole universe and the wider world. I think many people try to interpret that as keep thinking about the content of the Quran and the content of the Sunnah and the minutiae and detail of whether your beard should be this length or your trousers should be this much off the floor. And it's clearly not saying that, because the Quran talks about these great physical phenomena. It's talking about knowledge of the universe. Go out and get it. As for learning Arabic, I have tried to learn Arabic. I went to evening classes for a year. I received some training at work on learning Arabic. I'm currently attending Arabic classes. My Arabic is slowly getting better. I can just about read a newspaper at the speed of a 5-year-old, but inshallah it will get a lot better. Yusuf Ali was the Quran I read to start with. I have many other translations at home. The King Fahd, Hilali and Khan is one I have several versions of, annotated and otherwise, but I have a number of others. I find for scholarly work on the Quran, trying to understand the deeper meaning, I go to a website, the Quranic Arabic Corpus, where it's a breakdown of every word and syllable of the Quran into its original grammatical meaning at the time of the Prophet. I think it would be helpful to have not a new translation, but a book like the website, the Quranic Arabic Corpus, that breaks it down into some detail, a major piece of work that breaks the verses of the Quran and also gives them in order of revelation, so that one can see the changing message. You can see which are the transitional verses of the Quran that are changing the society of the time, and which are the ones that are absolute. And it's the differences between those verses that are often misused by those that try and distort Islam for their own ends. As a scientist, when you're dealing with scientific method, you deal with absolute proofs. So you say, this does this, and I can prove it and I can show it. So you're not likely to refer to the Quran because it's not within your scientific culture. And I think that's right. What I'm doing is approaching the Quran in a way, I've approached it in a scientific way, saying it purports to be the Word of God, and these things in it are revealed to be right. And so but if I was studying the properties of polonium 210, I wouldn't have to refer to the Quran, because that isn't evidence in terms of scientific evidence, because it's not measurable other than in the context of itself. We can tell it was written then, and it was written by this person, or it was revealed to the Prophet Muhammad. But we can't. There's some science around the actual science of the Quran, but there's no. We wouldn't. A scientist wouldn't say, "Oh, I found this. Oh, and by the way, I'm using proof, the fact that it's mentioned in the Quran," because that isn't the way scientific method works. And I don't think it would have been the way scientific method worked even in the years when there was that happy union between science and Islam. Although I think people would have opened their eyes, Islamic scientists would have said, "Isn't that amazing, that awe and wonder, it's repeated in the Quran." But you couldn't use the Quran as proof, because that isn't the way science works. So it is, whether or not people feel that there's a danger in making those connections, nevertheless the Quran is saying make them. It's tasking us to say, look, I'm expanding the universe, haven't you seen? I'm doing this. I've built you mountains. The grounds used to shake with your feet. Of course it used to shake if this earth was not hard on the surface when it was first formed. It was a liquid. If you had stood on it then, of course it would have shook with you. These verses were written by someone with the eyes of someone who saw the earth, or perceived the earth, at its very earliest stages. And the same voice is saying, look what I have done. I have done this. This is a proof that these words are true. So yeah, so that's the way I've approached it. And I don't, yes, if sometimes the science is wrong, and it really is, because we're in an age now when the science is subject to very, very, very rigorous proof. Indeed, yes, Surah 78, verses 6 to 7. People don't understand it. People generally don't know about mountains. The mountains in the earth float almost like icebergs. They are much lighter material than the material underneath. So they are set out with most of their mass beneath the surface, and in cross-section they look like pegs. Now no one would know that. Anybody looking at mountains 1400 years ago would look at like pyramids sitting just on the surface of the earth, but in fact their roots go down immensely deeply and create huge gravitational anomalies. The Himalayas are very much lighter than the rocks beneath them. And you can detect that lightness scientifically with gravitational surveys. When the verses concur with the science concurs with the Quran, we need to be able to say, as Muslims, be confident and celebrate that and say, look, our book says this, and you just discovered the same.
شكرا يا ربي شكرا هديت قلبي شكرا نورت دربي شكرا شكرا يا رب شكرا يا